Brewster here with a new episode of Chordplay. This is the chords of Leslie West, and I've had a lot of requests to feature more of the late, great Leslie West music. Definitely a legendary guitarist for sure, and it was about 3 years ago exactly when I created a three-for-all as a tribute to Leslie. And actually that video was created, edited, and posted the same day that he passed away, unfortunately, and I didn't find out until after I'd posted that video, and I noticed the announcements that he'd passed. And what a legendary guitarist, you know, hugely important, impactful, and influential. And Mountain's music, along with Leslie's music, is every bit as influential as Led Zeppelin, Deep Purple, and Black Sabbath and bands like that. They were huge. You know, everybody loved, Mountain for sure. And, they formed in Long Island, New York in 1969. They released 8 studio albums, 5 live albums, 4 compilations. And definitely their music was massively important as far as rock and roll and kind of helping usher in, hard rock and heavy metal for sure. Legends. And just as a reminder, Mountain played at the original Woodstock, and it seems like a lot of people forget their appearance or their set, and Mountain's set at Woodstock was unreal. Leslie's guitar tone was massive. It sounded like a big, hairy, woolly mammoth or something. And speaking of his tone, I always wondered, how did he get that sound? I just assumed it was like a plexi and a fuzz face or something, but he was actually using a Sun PA, like the Coliseum PA, which that's crazy. And that's why he had such a distinct and unique sound. And the Woodstock set, or the performance, that was actually Mountain's 3rd gig. Could you imagine putting a band together and your 3rd gig is friggin' Woodstock? That's unbelievable. Total legends. So the music and chord-based examples in this episode came from 2 Mountain albums and also Leslie's first solo album, which is called Mountain. And, like I mentioned earlier, they released 8 studio albums as Mountain. Leslie released a bunch of solo albums as a solo artist under his own name, but I just basically targeted those early albums, and I wanted to move away from Mississippi Queen, because that's like the only song it seems like most people know from Mountain. And that's a great song, but it's been broken down and kind of put under a microscope thousands of times. So we're going to do a deep dive into some of Leslie's music and some of Mountain's music beyond Mississippi Queen. So anyway, here we go. With the opening That's Never in My Life from the Mountain album Climbing, and that's just a huge riff, very fuzzed out and massive, so kick on your fuzzes. So it basically starts with this big D5 over A right there. You're just moving between C and B single notes like this. And then just smear this G note into an A power chord like that. And then do it again, the D. And that C to B single note riff. And then you hear this little, right, I think A minor pentatonic right there. And then you start this riff. So you're kind of sliding into that A. And you're grabbing that C, C sharp, D to F right there. And then this double stop, 3rd fret on the B and the G string. End up on that G note right there. And then you got that G, F, G, and then that double stop on the 3rd fret on the G and B string again. So that first pass. And then you're kind of walking down and grabbing that B flat. And then you kind of move into C or C7, and I'm actually using my thumb there. I think it's actually an overdub, but I'm kind of doing all of it at the same time. So I'm kind of grabbing that kind of 10th fret bar, and then you're going from the minor to major 3rd there in C. And overdub, but you hear this little lick. But you can actually hold on to that root note because it has this huge fuzzed out kind of sound. And then end up on this B flat power chord. And you go right back to that opening riff. And then do it again. But that's a great song. Ass-kicking riff right there. Next up's the song You Can't Get Away from the album Nantucket Sleigh Ride, and this has another really cool blues rock riff like this. Basically starts with this B to E power chord kind of move. You know, pretty basic right there. And then you have another like really cool riff right here. So you're grabbing this B and kind of sliding into that B and then climbing up D, D sharp to E right there. And that E to D, and then you've got this A to G. Like that. And you kind of start it again. And the second time you're actually going to end up on this B note before you hop up to that A and G again, like this. Two different versions of that riff. One ends on that E, the other one ends on that B right there, like that. And then eventually it kind of reminds me of a Who riff, but you're doing this E to D to A, and then E to D, A, and then this kind of smeared G into a lower E. Next up is the song Sittin On A Rainbow from the Mountain album Climbing, and this is just like this bouncy, obnoxious riff, like this. So it starts with this. That's the obnoxious kind of bouncy part. End on that A power chord right there. And then you're going to walk up and back into A right there from E. You're kind of moving into this A. you're kind of like making your way through this D. Riff again, and then you're doing this G, like open position, G, D, and then D to A, and then you do that again, G, D, D to A, and let that A ring. Cool song, really basic, but great song. Next up's the song Blood of the Sun. This came from Leslie's album Mountain from 1969, and this is actually before the band Mountain. They named the band after that album. This is really cool, something like this. So it starts with yet another single note kind of bluesy riff like this. So now you're sliding into that A note right there. You start doing like this chromatic kind of idea like that. So from the beginning, right, chromatic right there, F, F sharp to G, and then G, G sharp to A. C to D, like that. Go back to that F, D, C, D thing. And then right there it starts the verse, and there's some chord changes happening here. And actually I couldn't find any notation except for Mississippi Queen, and there was maybe like one or two other Mountain songs. Very little tab available for this band. But I'm hearing this. So it goes into D major. And then I'm hearing that you can definitely hear like a different chord right there. I'm hearing ringing open strings in there. So I'm hearing that. It's like a B flat 6. And if you don't like doing it there, you could also do it up there. But I'm hearing those open strings. It's ringing kind of like that. So D major is a B flat 6, and then D major again to a B7 flat 5 right here. And you hear it get real dark and moody right there for a second, and then back to D major, B flat 6, and then it's just power chords, B flat, C to D. So some unusual chords right there happening, some unusual changes, and it's all fuzzed out too. Unexpected changes right there, but really cool and interesting. I like that song. Next up's the song This Wheel's on Fire, and this also came from Leslie's Mountain album from 1969. And once again, there's some unusual chord twists, hiding in the song, like this. So it basically starts with these two G power chords right there, and then the single note riff, and then hit those G power chords again, and then this single note riff, and just repeat that again. And start doing this G power chord. Eventually it shifts up to a B flat power chord and then back to G. And then it's an E flat, flat 5 right there. And that's very shocking, you know, to your system or whatever when you hear it. And then D5 right there in open position. And then D5 over C right there. And then D5 over B flat right there. And then end on that G5 in open position right there. So that's really interesting. Like Leslie was totally not afraid of making some chord changes and taking some chances, you know, with his chord progressions and his riffs. Really cool. All right, last but not least is the song The Laird, and this came from the Mountain album Climbing. As you can see, I'm on acoustic guitar, and we're also in drop D tuning for this, and this is really interesting. It also reveals some of Leslie's acoustic side, which is kind of overlooked and underappreciated, because he did record a lot of acoustic stuff with Mountain and also on the solo albums too. And this is really cool. Keep in mind we're in drop D, like this. Starts with this really interesting chord thing in the intro. Like that. And it's kind of like a C minor add 9 implied, but you're sliding from, you know, B into C. So you're kind of doing like this minor major 7 kind of implied right there. And you're moving up like that. And then moving that, you know, E flat down to D. Right there. So that's interesting, and I'm also fretting it like that with my middle finger on the root. That way I can reach over and grab, you know, this E flat with my index finger. And then just go to D major right there. And then do it again. And then you hear these giant, you know, drop D chords. There's D major, and then it's C over D, like C major over D, and then it's G over D, and then G minor over D, and then D major right there. And then you hear this little fill, and goes right back into D again. And that intro is really cool. Definitely, Leslie's not really known as an acoustic guitarist, but check out some of their acoustic stuff in Mountain and his solo material too. And there was great stuff like that everywhere. All right, that's going to wrap this episode of Chordplay with the chords of Leslie West. Definitely a very important and influential, you know, guitar legend for sure. The late great, you know, genius. And definitely, if you're a certain age, you know, if you're a little older, you know exactly how important, you know, his music and his guitar playing was, either, you know, as a solo artist or with Mountain. And if you're younger, you may not really get it. You know, you might know, you know, Mississippi Queen and think, well, what else? You know, but there's a lot. Definitely, if you dive into those early albums, there's all kinds of stuff going on. And even some of the later stuff, you know, as it moved, you know, from the 70s into the 80s, and Leslie started to kind of do more like solo albums and stuff, and he did reform the band a few times. But there's nothing like classic Mountain and classic Leslie West, you know, back in the late 60s and early 70s. So anyway, leave some feedback and comments. Please subscribe to Night Lessons, and I'll be back before you know with more content and material. Thank you.